Do you ever have a bait that you trust so much it just feels weird not to throw it? Well, for me, and this has definitely changed over the years, that is the bladed jig. And a lot of people call them ChatterBaits or whatever the brand is, but at the end of the day, they plain catch fish, and a lot of times on the larger end of the spectrum. Now, a little history: the ChatterBait was invented by Ron Davis and sold to Z-Man in 2008, and now there are hundreds of different variations that each company has made. A lot of anglers will call them ChatterBaits, but at the end of the day, this is the bladed jig. Now, let me walk you through the gear, the line, how to fish these things, and some common mistakes of why a lot of people actually miss their hook set. Now, if you're not using the right setup, you're going to actually miss a lot of hook sets, and it has a lot to do with the rod. See, what happens whenever you throw out a chatterbait is bass aren't absolutely annihilating this. You will feel your rod load up, and a lot of times they throw it out, they feel the rod load up a little bit, and they hook set, and that is when they miss a lot of bass. Because what is happening is that the bass, what you're feeling is that vortex the bass is creating when its mouth, when it's coming up to hit that lure. And what is happening is that our reaction time is actually 200 milliseconds. And a lot of the time you feel it, you set the hook, and that wasn't enough time for that bass to suck that lure deep into its mouth, and so you set the hook and you actually miss the hook set because you set it too early. Now, there's 3 different ways that you can combat this. One, you can buy a rod that has like a medium power, medium heavy power, and a moderate action tip, which means it's going to bend. So what happens when that bass pulls that lure into its mouth, the end of your rod is going to give a whole lot more, allowing that bass to suck it in and get that deeper hook set within the mouth. There's 2 other ways you can combat this. One, you can kind of send the lure and you can keep your rod at a 45-degree angle. And so as you're reeling this in, you kind of feel the thump thump, then you reel down, creating that delayed hook set, and then set the hook on the chatterbait. The third way is you just got to remember a delayed hook set. So if you throw this out and you're reeling it down kind of at a 10-degree angle to the lure, you feel the pop pop, you kind of reel in, give it a second, almost like a frog hook set, not quite that long, but then set the hook. And a lot of times this is going to increase your chance of setting that hook past the barb on the bladed jig. So for rods, you can run a 7.2, medium heavy power, moderate or fast action rod tip, and this is going to be really great. I'm actually a little weird. I like running my chatterbait on a 6.8 medium powered fast action top water rod. I don't know, it just feels good in my hands. I actually have a few other chatterbaits. This is actually on a 7.2 right here, and so I have a variety of different rods that I use to fish the chatterbait, but I primarily use my 6.8 top water rod. And so I don't know, it just, ooh, there's a bass hit right out there. See if he's still around by the time I get this untangled. Ah, he's gone. Dang it. Oh. Got Orioles fighting over my head. Now, when it comes to the reels, I like using a faster reel. So anything between the 7.5-1 or the 8-1, I like to pick up a lot of line really fast. Now, the fishing line really depends on the conditions. If you're fishing kind of open water, that 14 to 16 pound fluorocarbon works really well. Now, if you're fishing around grass or fishing around lily pads and you think that bass is actually going to dive down into the grass and lily pads, you might want to think about using 30-pound braid. And actually what I like to use a braided main line, and I use a fluorocarbon leader. So I have that run out maybe 5 feet on my leader, and I tie those together with an Albright knot, which is a knot. I have a video, top 3 fisherman's knots that every fisherman should know. And so you can check that out. Actually, I'll link that video description as my first comment. All right, let's keep on moving on. Now let's talk about where to fish it. And the bladed jig is actually a very versatile bait, right? You can throw it out and you can burn it just under the surface. And a lot of times that'll get those bass to commit. You can actually count down your lures. So if you throw it 1,000, then bring it in, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 on the drop, then bringing it in. And you can keep counting down your lures to see where they're at in any of the water columns. Another thing you can do is you can kind of throw it out there and let it sink all the way to the bottom and just slow roll it along the bottom. Or this is underutilized. You throw your chatterbait out and then you just go off the bottom and let it fall. off the bottom, let it fall. Up here in Northeast Ohio, we call that yo-yoing. I'm not quite sure where you call it in your neck of the woods, but try to utilize that way of fishing the chatterbait as well, and you might find some luck. But my favorite place to fish the chatterbait is wherever I see grass, especially if there is a water column between the top of the grass and the surface. What I'll do is I like throwing this out, rolling it through there, and getting it the right speed where it's kind of nicking the top of the grass. And if you get caught up, a lot of anglers will think, hey, this is a dead cast. That is not true. Rip that bait out of the grass, and a lot of times, for whatever reason, that bass will commit right after you rip it out of the grass. So when it comes to trailers, I would recommend don't overthink this, right? In the summer, you want some type of thin, slim profile, which is what I got right here. I think this is a Z-Man, forget the name of it. Razor shads, maybe. I have the Yamamoto Seiko, that thin profile. If there's panfish around, that's when I actually bring out the Yamamoto Seiko. And other anglers will swear by those Kitex, those paddle tails, and I actually have on one of mine right here. This is a, I believe, an original ChatterBait right here, and this actually has a missile D-bomb. So another option, just keep in mind, if you're going to be fishing this around grass, you typically don't want that wider body, so you might not want to use a creature bait. You might want to use a thinner profile. Now, what makes these so effective is the vibration that it puts off, right? It's activating that lateral line, and it's humming at a frequency that bass can hear. If you guys aren't familiar with Dr. Keith Jones, he worked for Berkeley for 33 years, and he oversaw the research around bass behavior at Berkeley, or pure fishing. And so really what he did was determine how bass feed, how they react to certain environments, different lures. And because of that, that's why you got a lot of these Berkeley scented baits and so forth and so on coming out of that company. But what he did find is that bass don't hear high frequency sounds that well. And so the range between 100 hertz and 200 hertz is really what bass hear very well under the water. They're really sensitive to that pitch, and that's exactly what chatterbaits and bladed jigs do. So that's what makes them so wildly effective. All right, little tips. You want to change yours up. You can actually take a pair of pliers and bend this up or bend it down to kind of get a different variation, make it sound a little different than the 100 other bladed jigs that went by their face earlier that week or that day. All right, when it comes to budgets, well, you can get cheaper chatterbaits. The original chatterbait, I believe you can get $6 at Walmart. Then you can get into the higher premium grade chatterbaits, those bladed jigs. You're talking your JackHammer, your baby JackHammers, your Thunder Crickets. These are going to be more expensive. And the reason they're more expensive, I mean, at the end of the day, I can get into the science behind it. I've actually done some research on this, but they're really, when it gets down to it, they just perform better than a lot of the other bladed jigs out there. Now, a lot of you don't go running to the comment section and be like, oh, I've caught plenty on the original chatterbait. I believe you can, but I have fished a lot of them, and I fished a lot of them a lot. And those JackHammers, those baby JackHammers, those Thunder Crickets, those more expensive lures fetch those prices because they simply outperform a lot of other bladed jigs on the market. So when it comes to colors, if you have shad in your lake, you're going to go those white or silver. Bluegill heavy ponds, you're going to use chartreuse or that green pumpkin. If you got muddy water, you're going to use that black and blue. Now the chatterbait's actually really great for muddy water, right? When you have diminished senses when it comes to sight feeding, they're going to lean into their lateral line and their hearing to be able to find that bait. So utilizing a chatterbait in muddy water may be a good idea. So bladed jigs are going to crush around docks. They're going to crush around grass. They're going to crush around lily pads. I like throwing these out shallow and bringing them a little deep. They'll crush there as well. They're going to crush around docks, and whenever it becomes a little bit windy or there's some surface disruption, pull out the chatterbait. And don't forget, especially if you know where those channel ledges are, maybe that runs through that body of water, throw this down on that channel ledge and yo-yo it back to you. You might like what you find. Now, here's what I do. Whenever water temperatures go over 50 degrees, I'm usually pulling out the bladed jig. Where there's a grass line, I'm tying one on. When you're fishing mid to shallow cover, I'm tying one on. Basically, if you are bass fishing, this belongs on your deck. Now, if you have a bladed jig combo that you absolutely love that destroys it for you, please head down to the comments and type that in. I am constantly trying out new ones. Right now, I love the JackHammer, the baby JackHammer, and the Thunder Cricket. And a lot of the trailers I like are the Missile D-Bomb. I've already talked about, I believe this is a Razor Shads from Z-Man, also the Yamamoto Seiko. So those are the ones that get my money. I will throw the links to everything I talked about in the description below. Now, if you made it this far, far, you must love bass fishing. And if you have this tied on right now, you're gonna want 2 other lures tied on as well. I'm gonna show you and walk you through, just like I did this one, how to fish the Texas rig right there. And if you're not fishing the Yamatanuki by Yamamoto, it's like a cheat code for bass fishing. You can check how to fish that, rig that right there. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you.